Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Live with Rahana, and today's topic we actually have is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and peace. And our guest today we have once again Raja Faisal, who's a famous journalist in Pakistan. And today we have actually gone through his article, which has been published in Asian Telegraph, and the topic is A Long Road to Afghanistan Peace. So how are you today?
I'm perfectly fine. Hope you are okay as well, Rehana. And it's always a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. So the first question we are actually going to be going towards is Afghanistan is a country where the political changes happen very often and very quickly. So we can't predict what is happening tomorrow. So what would you like to say regarding that in relation to your article, which was published today?
Well, today's article, it was basically related to the spoilers that are actually affecting the process of Afghan Peace Deal. And we all know that there are stakeholders in Afghan Peace Deal, Pakistan being one of them, then the Americans, then Taliban, and then the current setup, which is governing the green zone of Kabul, I must say, not the other cities, as because everyone knows that their control is as soon as they get out of the green zones of Kabul, their control vanishes, and the only people who control outside of Kabul green zones that are Taliban. So all of these are the stakeholders, and Chinese and Russians, they are stakeholders in that as well. So uh, there are spoilers as well. People who do not want peace to be restored back to Afghanistan, and they don't want to see a peaceful Afghanistan. And them spoilers, I would openly take their names. Indians do not want peace to be restored in Afghanistan. And then uh, the government I talked about, the setup which I have talked about, sitting in the green zones of Kabul, they do not want the peace to be restored, and they do not want Americans to withdraw from uh, uh, from Afghanistan, and that's why there are different tactics which are going on. And I did highlight that in very recently, there were quite a few attacks on the school children, and there were a couple of more attacks on civilians as well, peaceful civilians and innocent civilians. They were, getting
So
killed.
I would like to stop you here and ask you now. These attacks, like normally, whenever attacks happen on the security and on the like Afghan government over there at the moment, like who are representing the government. So these attacks are normally the Taliban take responsibility of them that they have actually like attacked, but now this situation is getting very different because like now we hear the Taliban saying that they are not the ones attacking and they are very keen to actually make sure that the United Nations leave Afghanistan soon. So they understand that by attacking means that they are going to prolong the stay of the United of the like American troops over there. So like who are the people who are actually trying to give Taliban a bad name and are the spoilers? So do you think it's India or do you think it's other forces from around the world as well?
You're very right about it, Rehana. Rehana, problem is, if you take the attacks which were conducted by the Taliban uh, on air bases, on convoys of the armed forces, on police, on other administrative setup of Afghanistan, which is um, in Afghanistan. Uh, Taliban always used to take the responsibility of it. They would never shy away from that. But when it came to in on the recent attacks, Taliban did not take any responsibility of it. They simply said that we did not do it and we don't endorse it. Because today's Taliban, they are very different Taliban. If they were not different Taliban, then Americans would not have called them allies last year. Because if you take one of the examples of last year, there was a statement by um, by the Trump administration, in which they simply said that we are fighting against ISIS-K, ISIS Khorasan, and their allies in that fight against ISIS Khorasan are Taliban. So basically, practically speaking, American forces, they admitted that Taliban were actually on their side fighting against ISIS-K. So you can't really tell them that today's Taliban are the same Taliban which were fought against in post 9/11 era. And here, talking about the spoilers, well, India and that very setup, I'm talking about the green zone setup, they are the spoilers. We need to understand something very important, that is that um, since 9/11 and in post 9/11 era, uh, C-130s were, you know, uh, landing on Bagram Air Base again and again. And in them C-130s, what we saw that different kind of leaders whom nobody knew before, but Americans, they brought them into Afghanistan, and suddenly they took the offices in the Kabul. I'm talking about the top offices. I mean, if you go out and ask somebody about the very setup outside of the green zones, they will tell you the reality of them people. They openly, all over Afghanistan, they openly say that how can we trust them? Why? Because they are pro-American. And who is America? America is a country that actually occupied our country. And how could we be standing on the on them people's side who were actually allies of the Americans, and Americans are
One
the
thing,
same Americans who butchered so many Afghan people. So this
Raja,
this is reality.
Raja Faisal, I would like to like conclude this question with this last part with it, that we also see on the day of the deadline when the American troops were supposed to go back, that we just see incident happen, like a blast happen where a lot of Afghan nationals actually were actually killed on that day. That's the right word, killed on that day. So like what connection do you feel, because it's very strange that that was the deadline and on the same day, because Taliban are not doing it, so the spoilers are doing it. And do you think that the United Nations are actually plotting with the spoilers as well, as they don't want to go, so they're creating this situation so they can stay longer?
I'll tell you a very funny thing, and which is a factual thing. Would you believe that Americans and the current setup of Kabul green zones, they actually offered Indians to come to Afghanistan and be the part of that alliance which is against Taliban and against Pakistan. India that always wanted to, keep Pakistan busy on the Western Front as well. Why? Because they want to have two fronts open for Pakistan's military, one on the eastern side with India and one on the western side with Afghanistan. So they want to split the army on both sides. Like half of the army of Pakistan, it goes there, and half on the other side. So the capacity of Pakistan's armed forces, it gets split. So they always wanted to do it, but when they were offered, they refused. Why? Because they know the ground situation. They know the ground realities. And Indians very well know that the day they take their forces, or let's say if they take a couple of infantry brigades or a couple of artilleries or whatever, or armored, they take there, and then you would see what kind of result it would be coming out of Afghanistan. Why? Because they are the very Indians who were supporting this current setup. And if you look at people like Amrullah Saleh is a kind of person who, by the way, he happened to be former chief of NDS, National Directorate for Security. It is kind of CIA type of agency of Afghanistan, and he was head of that. And now, obviously, he's a deputy president, and he is running the show. So all of the eyes are actually looking towards him when we see the bombs happening on the very day when Americans were supposed to pull out from Afghanistan, the same date they chosen for that school attack. So it shows that somebody there down the line who is actually sitting and enjoying himself in Kabul green zone does not want Americans to get out of there. Why? Because the only people who are securing that guy or securing the green zone is Americans. If you take Americans today out of that green zone, I can bet over it that it won't sustain for a month. A month is too much. I've told
And
about, but
one
I'm
more
telling you.
question, it's very strange that like the United Nation are like the United Nation and America are keep on talking about having peace in South Asia, like especially Afghanistan. So when they want peace in Afghanistan, and they do understand that at the moment Pakistan is the only country in South Asia which is keeping peace with all the neighbors, and the neighbors look up to it as well. And even America knows that only this situation in Afghanistan can change if Pakistan gets involved. So why have they been trying to involve India? Why have they been asking India to take part in the development in Afghanistan? Are they really want peace, or are they trying to create this drift, or are they using this situation between Pakistan and like India, so they can enjoy this situation and always keep control, not in Afghanistan, but even keep control in Pakistan and India?
Brilliant question. You know what, Rehana? When they were not asked to come and join them, they themselves volunteered that we want to come and we want to, help rebuild Afghanistan. Well, rebuilding, it was just a joke. There are numerous of their consulates which are working in every city of Afghanistan, not for sort of betterment of Afghanistan. Sorry, it wasn't for Afghanistan, but they just wanted to have trouble on the western part of Pakistan, which we saw that there was there. And Pakistan, time and again, has given dossiers to the world powers, to the organizations controlling the whole world, telling them that, look, we have the evidences that someone on our eastern side is actually going to, or on western side, and investing terrorism in Pakistan. Literally, I mean, there were evidences of them paying to TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. TTP was being used by the Indians against Pakistan, and there were different terrorist activities which were being planned in Afghanistan and which were being handled by people like Kulbhushan Jadhav. And people like Kulbhushan Jadhav, then they get captured on the western side of Pakistan,
One more
hailing and
question.
having the names as Mubarak Patel, and uh, having a passport of India which had so many visits of so many different countries. So that
So
means that something was being cooked up, and it was not Afghanistan's
Raja Faisal,
betterment they
I
were
will I
looking
will
for. They
ask
just
you.
wanted to have another side open for Pakistan.
Sorry to interrupt you, Raja Faisal. I would like to ask you about Kalbatan Yadav. I was just going to say his name and you start talking about him. Now, he has been in Pakistan for many years. And what I read is that India is not very keen towards it. Like, India has been blaming Pakistan that Pakistan is not cooperating. But recently, Pakistan has been cooperating with this case going on in the international courts. Now, what is India doing? Because it doesn't seem that now India can say anything that Pakistan is not dealing with this case in an international level, because it doesn't seem like India is very much interested. India is just trying to create this thing that Pakistan is not treating Mr. Yadav well, and then Pakistan is not compiling with the international law, and Pakistan is not doing what it's supposed to do, and Pakistan is blaming India. Now, what do you think India is doing at the moment? Like, do you think that they really want him back? Are they working hard towards it? Because they are not ready to take the responsibility that the involvement has been in Balochistan. And even at the moment, whatever is happening in Balochistan has been happening in Sindh. And even in East Pakistan, it was all to do with India. Even the recent Prime Minister of India in couple of his statements has confirmed that he was a part of the East Pakistan war. He was a part of the Makti Bani as well. So is this not a big like answer that if he can be a part of it, like being the prime minister, what else is happening even in Balochistan at the moment? There must be many other officials which are part of it.
Well, your very long question and very short answer, it might sound very odd to you, but I will say it because our viewers, they might raise, questions about it. But if a person right in the middle of a ground full of people, his trousers drops down, what can he do? So that's what has happened to India. They can't do anything. They can't do anything about it. Why? Because the person we're talking about, he's with us. He's with us. And we know what he was up to. And we know where he was captured from. We have everything. Pakistan has everything to prove it that he was, captured in Pakistan. They keep on blaming. Oh, you entered in Iran and you captured him from there. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. If it was the case, then Iranians, they would have raised questions over Pakistan's entrance, illegal entrance in Iran. Or if somebody would have said, "Oh, you captured him from Afghanistan," well, what were Americans doing then? So India can't say anything about it. Why? Because India knows that this was going on, and that's why, by the way, if Pakistan had 15 consecutive years of war on terror, and Pakistan was facing terrorism for 15 consecutive years, and then suddenly things started getting better, that is because Pakistan countered that terrorism. Then Pakistan's intelligence, it countered that menace which was being penetrated by
But
people
Faisal,
like Kalbhushan
one
Jadhav.
thing one thing more I will add on. You're talking about the 15 years that Pakistan has been actually like countered the terrorism. But in those 15 years, India has been involved in the disinformation lab as well through the Europe. So don't you think that these 15 years do actually become a plus? And it does show that this has all been happening because of India. Although India has been saying it's been
Exactly.
Pakistan, it's been confirmed by Europe.
Exactly. And frankly speaking, uh, uh, allies like America and Western worlds who knew that Pakistan is actively fighting against the terrorism, and Pakistan is the only successor, the one who successfully countered terrorism. That's the only country is Pakistan. Otherwise, everyone got out of Afghanistan. I was about to say that the problem is the people who used to call themselves as allies of Pakistan, they did not do what they did not stand with Pakistan. I know people might say, oh, Pakistan was the one who was always getting do more requests or cries from the Americans, but what did Americans do with Pakistan? They didn't do justice to Pakistan. First of all, in 1989, 88, they got out of Afghanistan and they left Pakistan with what? Stingers and Mujahideens, next door neighbor. Afghanistan, that they left ISI, and it is Hillary Clinton's her own remarks in front of Congress, and she said it there that we left ISI with the stingers and with the Mujahideen, and we asked them to you deal with it. Well, if you do it and you run away from here, and this is the second time that here we are again, your allies, but at the end, what do we get? You keep on calling us, or you need to do more. What else you want us to do? We have given 70,000 lives and 200 billion dollars of our economy. We lost just because of your alliance. We don't want such kind of alliance, and that's why, by the way, now Americans, they know it that this is the only reason Pakistan has actually distanced itself from the Americans, and it was for good. Why? Because this alliance never brings anything to Pakistan, frankly speaking, because they always seek an alliance from Pakistan which is in their favor, not the mutual favor, not the mutual kind of interest. I mean, they are not bothered about anyone else's interest. They are only bothered about their own interest, what's good for them.
Because they know that
Hmm.
if if something happens in Afghanistan, the peace in Pakistan is going to be interrupted as well. So
Mhm.
if they really want peace, they actually need to give Pakistan that opportunity to work with Afghanistan.
You know, today's news is that, as you know, that Tajikistan's president is in Pakistan right now, and of course, very high-level talks are going on. Tajikistan is a country that has an air base which is famous for for use of other countries. Like previously, it was being used by the Indians. It's called Farkhor. Farkhor is right across the border from Afghanistan into Tajikistan, and that is around the third biggest city, Kunduz. I think it's 80 kilometers from there. So Indians, they used to have that airbase in past, and since couple of years they've been trying to get it again. And right now there are talks going on that maybe if America gets out of Afghanistan, then it would go towards Farkhor, go towards Tajikistan. From Tajikistan, they would try to control over Afghanistan or whatever, and they might do this kind of thing. And who knows that in coming future, if Americans leave, and of course, after the Americans, if things are not going well in terms of Afghan peace deal, then in that case there would be another civil war. Another civil war. Why? Because last time we saw a civil war, and in that civil war, people like Babrak Karmal and Najibullah, they've been, well, I mean, I don't need to tell. There, they met a very horrible end, and same is the case with the current setup. If the if there is a civil war, then there would be a very strange kind of situation for uh, for the current setup. And I think people like President Ghani and people like Amrullah Saleh, they need to be cautious about these things. And by the way, around 3 years ago, exactly 3 years ago, I was having a Twitter conversation with Amrullah Saleh, and I told him at that time that there would be a time that you would be regretting it. You continuously blame Pakistan for certain things. You continuously, monger hate amongst your population or amongst your diaspora elsewhere in the world. You're doing the wrong thing. Why? Because a day would come that the way you are turning yourself into a Najibullah, you will become a Najibullah of the future. So try to be on the safe side. You know, on the safe side, you need to be extra cautious. So these sort of people, they know about it. And one more thing, of course, Americans, they want presence in the region. So maybe Farkhor would be the place where they would like to
Mm.
be, and then they would try to police over Afghanistan. To me, I think until unless America is sincere enough and shuns these kind of spoilers like Indians and the setup sitting in the green zone, until unless that day, I mean, things can't be fixed in
Mm.
Afghanistan,
I
and
would
peace is unthinkable.
Yes, I will ask you the last question and then we can actually wrap up. So my last question is actually about the president of Afghanistan, who is Ashraf Ghani. Like in his recent statement, that he seems quite happy and he has a lot of faith in Pakistan with the peace talks. Like he's saying that the peace is in the hands of Pakistan now. So that gives out a positive reaction to the Afghani people, because there are many Afghani people who have gone against Pakistan because of post 9/11 war within Afghanistan. So what I would like to conclude is that Pakistan at the moment is on a very sensitive side when it wants the peace to take place, and there's one thing more, that there's a lot of Afghanis in Pakistan, more than Afghanistan, more than Iran, because Pakistan is the biggest country in the at the moment who has taken in a lot of refugees like Afghanis. After Pakistan is Iran, which has a lot of Afghanis, and then it comes Afghanistan. So Pakistan is really looking forward to actually send the Afghanis back to Afghanistan and help Afghanistan with the development. So how can India keep on saying, or how can other countries in the world keep on saying that Pakistan has something to do with what is happening in Afghanistan at the moment? All the Pakistan is just there. All the Pakistan is just there for the peace. So So what I'm trying to say is that like we can see that like Afghanistan is actually at the moment trusting Pakistan. So what would you like to wrap it up? Like what would your last comments be?
Well, to be honest, I mean, uh, President Ghani, if he says something, I won't believe in him. Why? Because they are the same people who, when they're talking to people in the streets or somewhere in the green zone, then they are simply spewing venom against Pakistan, and they are the ones who, when they're talking to their army people and their army generals, they keep on, propagating hate against Pakistan. And by the way, the people you're talking about, most of them who are in Europe or elsewhere living now, uh, they are such thankless people that first of all they ran away from Afghanistan and they came to Pakistan and they took our passports from Pakistan. And if you ask them what kind of passports you travel to Germany or you travel to Italy or wherever they are sitting right now, or even in Britain, you ask them, what passport did you use? And they would say that they used Pakistan's passport. They are such shameless people that they have no respect for the country that actually was feeding them, then providing them shelter, and then they were leaving this country having that country's passport. So they should be ashamed of
This
themselves.
there is one
And
thing
they
I
are the
would
very
I would
people.
add
And
on.
right now, by the way, let me finish. Right now, they are the very people who are actually propagating hate against different factions of Pakistan. Like they would say, "Oh, we will kill Punjabis," or "We." I don't want to say anything to them. Get a life. You don't deserve to be, called someone a human being. Why? Because you're such shameless people that people who were feeding you, you are actually trying to blame them for everything. Everything. They should be ashamed
There's
of
one
themselves.
one blame which is very common among them that like America sent us to Pakistan and we were given aid by the United Nations. So Pakistan was receiving aid for us and it wasn't feeding us properly. They kept half the aid themselves and the little aid was given us to live on. Now, is this true?
Well, what country would accept it? No country wants to accept it. Why can't they go to anyone else's country? I mean,
Especially
now,
India.
yeah, especially now when the ships are being taken to countries like Greece and countries like Italy, do they not see what's happening there? You know, do they not see what's going on in there? And did they not see what Bangladesh did uh, with Myanmar? I mean, people who were Muslims who were coming from Myanmar uh, uh, to Bangladesh, majority of them they were stopped, and there were so
Mm.
many countries who were not taking them. Australia doesn't take it. Australia takes all of them to one of the islands, and that's it. They do their cases and send them back. Over here in Pakistan, we treated them like one of us. You know, and there is another example of India. You know that they have passed the Citizen Amendment Act, and in that Citizen Amendment Act, they have, they have said it that we would accept all of the other religions, but not the Muslims, even if they're Afghanis or Pakistanis or whoever. So go and ask them whether they are ready to help you or not. And you know it by yourself. All of these Afghans, they know it by themselves that the only stable country where they can feed themselves, where they can have a job and nobody would ask them out of courtesy, out of brotherhood, that is Pakistan. Otherwise, wherever they go, they're not treated well, by the way. They're not treated well.
And even
So
even now at the moment, like I see that anything happens in Afghanistan, anybody has any accident or there's any kind of problem going on, or even if they want to have higher education, they always cross borders from Peshawar and come to Pakistan.
and not talking about Taliban. I'm not talking about Afghans, people who are living out of them green zones. They have all the love for Pakistan, and we always accept them, and they accept us. They love us, and we love them. But it's the only people who are the problem right now. They are in the green zone, and green zone, believe me, is hardly 2% of the population of Afghanistan. What we're talking about, so we're not bothered whatever they want to say about us, because we know what an average and a common Afghan thinks about Pakistan. We respect them.
Thank you. Thank you, Raja Faisal, for actually coming in into my show today. And it was nice to hear your views and talk about Pakistan and Afghanistan and the peace, which is very important at the moment. And we do understand that the Taliban and Pakistan government are trying to make it possible that the American troops can leave early. But then we have some kind of spoilers, as we know, you've named them earlier, who are trying their best that they can never be peace in the region, so they can take advantage of this situation. So I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank my audience, and a very good evening to all of you, and Allah Hafiz from me.